Have you ever felt like you're psychic or something happened and you just can't explain it, but there's no way it's a coincidence? Yeah, that happens to me a lot. And I'm going to tell a story about the first time something happened that made me take notice about this kind of stuff. And really, since then, I've noticed it a lot more. So here we go. In the last couple of years, actually, this was about 3.5 years ago, I had been out working, and it was kind of a long drive home that night. And it was October, so it was dark, a little earlier. I was coming down the road, and I remember exactly where I was. And I remember having this thought of, I wonder if he wants me to stop by and look at that thing that we were talking about. Because I had been talking to my brother about something that he needed help with, but he was kind of dragging his feet about it. And he hadn't really brought it up in like over a month. It had been a while. But it was just random. Like, I was just driving and I had this thought, like, yeah, maybe I should stop by tonight. And, it's early enough and maybe he needs help with that. Uh, all right. I'm going to try to play this out how it happened. I had the thought, maybe 5 seconds later, I reach up to my dash to, I've got a touch screen and I can use CarPlay to send a message. So I reach up to send him a message, and then I pause for a second, and then I thought, nah, I'm not going to bother him. And then I pulled my hand back, and at that moment, I got a message from him asking me. Actually, I've got it. Hang on. This is okay. So I get a message at that moment, and he says, "You're going to have to help me set this camera up again. I can't figure out how to do it." So at that moment, I then reach back, finish extending my arm back out to reply to the message. And then I tell him, "You probably won't believe me, but I was literally reaching to send you a message to ask you about the camera." And his response was, "That's spooky." Now, I want to sort of just break this down and give you a sense of the real timeline here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say 1, 2, and 3. One's going to be when I initially had the thought. Number 2 is going to be when I reached up to the radio. Number 3 is going to be when I received the message from him. And I'm going to do it as close as I can remember to how it played out that night. Okay, so here we go. Driving down the road. 1, 2, 3. That was the moment where I'm now listening to the message that he sent me, which means he was typing out the message when I had the thought about talking to him. Because he, there were a few seconds where he typed the message, and then he had to hit send, and then the phone system had to, do what it has to do to send the message. I mean, it literally means he was typing and sending the message when I had the thought. which is incredibly freaky to me. I do not believe that was a coincidence. And I have more examples to explain why. And if you've ever had experiences like this, please comment, because I'm sure this happens to other people, but boy, it happens to me a lot. Okay, so for example, this is a small example that does happen a lot. Last weekend, I was messaging with a few different people about a few different things. This particular moment that I want to mention, I was in a restaurant and I just ordered my food and I was standing against the counter, the table, just waiting. And I had this kind of thought that just grabbed me. Like, if your phone immediately started ringing loud in a restaurant in your pocket, you would quickly go in to get it and deal with it, right? That's the exact response I had, just randomly. There was no buzz, there was no sound. I was just standing there, and then I thought, oh, I got to check my phone. And so I quickly reached into my pocket and pulled it out, opened the app to see that they had just read the last message I had sent them, because it shows you when they read it. And then the little thing popped up. It shows that they were typing. So I somehow knew that they were picking up the phone and saw that message and then were typing. I don't know. My mind doesn't completely wrap my head around this. But I'm going to list a few other small examples, and then I'm going to give you my guess at what I think is actually going on. Okay, so I don't remember the day, but I remember exactly this was a weekend. On a Sunday evening, later in the day, maybe even Sunday night, I had this random thought about, oh, I haven't heard from him in a little while. I wonder what's going on. And this guy was, so he worked at a company that I've done some work for, but I don't hear from him all the time. It's just here and there. And there was something in the works at the time, but I hadn't heard from him about that in a while. So I distinctly remember having this thought that evening. And then the next day, early, I got a message from him. Now, I don't know about you, but it's not unusual to have a thought on like a Sunday night and then wait until Monday to take care of it. So I think it's possible, at least, that that's what happened. It may not be, but it sure felt like it. It's just one of those things. There are a lot of those things that have happened to me where I thought about someone randomly and then I got a message from them or I got a phone call from them. I've gotten a lot of those. And I have one guess on what's happening. And I don't know if I'm wrong or right or not even close. All right, so my explanation, we have to roll back the clock a little bit and think about cell phones 25 years ago. So a friend of mine had a Nokia phone, and he had bought a little aftermarket antenna. And this antenna would light up whenever a phone call was coming in or a message. Back then, it was mostly just calls. We're talking like 99, 2000. So this light up antenna, the way it worked is the phone is communicating with the tower all the time. And when a call or message comes in, the phone is told by the cellular system, hey, you need to turn your power up so that you can receive this call. It's getting that communication, and that sort of radio noise is what lights up that antenna. And it used to happen like just driving down the road if somebody had a security system or a police radar, that kind of stuff. He would know that he was about to get a phone call because it would light up maybe a second before it would start to ring. So he'd see it light up, reach down, pick it up, and then the phone call would actually start. You would see it and hear it. I think I think my best guess right now is that's what happens to me, but in a roundabout way. And I'm going to have to tell one more little explanation to make that make sense. But basically, that's the only thing I can think of outside of quantum entanglement or something like that I don't even fully understand. So, the last piece of this puzzle that I need to tell in order to make this whole thing make any sense is going to sound crazy, but please follow me on this. I promise I'm not making it up. Okay. Part of my work has been setting up wireless networks, and that means wireless antennas. So, like if you go into a restaurant, you might see a white circle or square on the ceiling, one or two here and there. That's a wireless access point. So think about it like a cell tower that your phone connects to. This is a wireless antenna in a building for your computer and TV to connect to. So I noticed this would have been 2010. Yeah, 2010. I noticed that the wireless router sitting on my desk was oddly lining up with the sort of light headache I had on the right side of my head at this time. And I was like, it's weird. I don't see how it's related, but I'll move it to the other room just to see if that matters. And it did matter. My headaches didn't happen anymore. And like I said, it was specifically on that side. And just to give you a sense, I was sitting at the desk and the router was on the very, edge, as far away from me as you could get and still be on the desk, which was probably 4 feet from my head. So we're not talking that far. Anyway, yeah, moving it out of the room eliminated that. And so I didn't think too much about it at the time, but I did think about it. And I did notice over time more things like that happening. And it still happens. If I am going to set up a really high powered, strong access point, especially an outdoor one, and I'm in the room with it, like right beside it, there's definitely a feeling from it. I would have to explain it in the way, if you've ever been to a loud concert, specifically in a small venue, you have felt the sound. Okay? If you know what I'm talking about, like if you were close to the speakers, you could feel that pressure wave. And that's kind of what it feels like when I'm close to one of these really high output access points. And so I think when you combine that with how the antenna works on the old cell phone, maybe that's an explanation. But I don't understand how I knew. I was thinking about a specific subject with a specific person at the exact time. I don't fully understand that. I do want to throw out one more thing, and I'm still not sure what I think about this, but I'm going to mention it just to sort of document it here. There is a guy, his name is Joe McMoneagle, and supposedly he worked in remote viewing for the last like 35 years. And I'm still skeptical about it, but some of the things he talks about could possibly make sense for me with this stuff. It's listen, this has happened enough. I've tried to try to do it and it doesn't work. And one of the things Joe talks about is your ego gets in the way and you have to just sort of open yourself up to letting it happen. And that's one thing I've noticed more and more recently is this stuff doesn't happen if I try to make it happen. Like if if I just have a random thought about a person just out of nowhere and I send them a message right then, usually they're not thinking about me. Like there's no connection there. So I've tested it a few times and that seems to not work so well. But all of the times where it did work were times when I was off guard. You know, the other day in the restaurant, my mind wasn't really anywhere at that time. Yeah, I mean that's really kind of it, but gosh, it seems like something's there that I just don't understand. And I really am curious if other people have similar experiences because I want to know how rare this is and and if any of this makes sense to anybody else. It sure gives me something to think about, but I don't know what to think about it.